Okay, now for this video, it is similar to the last one because you're given some information on the root. However, you are given only one root. Okay, so that's a little bit troublesome. Okay, now you're also given a point, but we need to start looking at this and say, yeah, how are we going to do this? And how are we going to write this down in the standard form? Now, um, so this is what's going to happen. First, you can see that this is an imaginary root since we see the I, right? And when we have imaginary roots, so it's always going to be in the form of a plus bi or a minus bi. So we have to do a little bit of a makeover that instead of writing I minus 1, we will go ahead and reformat this to negative I. I mean negative 1 plus I. Okay. Now, here's another thing about imaginary roots. If you remember how we solved the quadratic equation by using the quadratic formula, okay, you have the negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So here's the thing. So if you have plus or minus, so this is the case where the plus or minus actually are um, they are pretty relevant here. So if you have one root that's called a negative 1 plus I, it is guaranteed, okay? It is guaranteed that the other root must be negative 1 minus I, okay? It would be negative 1 minus I, okay? It has to be. So in short, you can combine them together and say negative 1 plus or minus I, okay? That is your, well, I mean, those are the two roots, but we can combine them together into a single simple expression. So even though we give you one root, it's actually two, okay? The other one is just testing you if you know, okay? So now, how are we going to do this, okay? By writing the standard form. Now, if you're given the roots, well, wouldn't it be easier to start with the root form, you may think? Well, actually, we're going to do something even easier. How much easier? We are going to write this down as if we are starting from the end of the whole problem. Think about how you use quadratic formula to solve it or use completing square to solve it. So that's what you get, right? At the end, x equals to negative 1 plus or minus I. So what we're about to do is kind of reversing the every single step. It's like, oh, before this happens, what was the previous step? And we say, oh yeah, what did you, what happened? You subtracted 1, right? So that you can get it. So let's go ahead, add 1 back on both sides. So then you have this, okay? And then you ask, wait, why do we have I? Well, I is because of square root of negative 1, okay? That's why you have an I. But how do you have, why do you have a square root? We ask, oh, it's because we took a square root on both sides, right? So let's go ahead and get rid of the square root. Okay, so we're like rewinding basically, showing us what was the previous look. Okay, so something like this, and then we say, oh yeah, since we are looking for the standard form, right? So could you go ahead and FOIL this thing? Okay, and we say sure. And then we say, oh yeah, and let's go ahead set one side equal to 0. And then we say, oh yeah, no problem. Let's go ahead and add 1 on both sides, and we have this equation. Now, is this our equation? Well, not quite yet, because we still have to find the missing a value. So we can consider the a value, it's being, factored out, sitting in the front. And when we set it equal to 0, so the a is gone. So now we have to put the a back in. And this is why we give you a little point, which is 2 comma 2 right here, so that you could find out the a value. As you can see, a is the only unknown right here. So let's go ahead, put in the 2 and 2 for the x and y values. And then we have 2 equals to a times parentheses 4 plus 2, which is a total of 10. So 10a equals to 2, so a must equal 2. We'll divide by 10 on both sides, so you have 1/5 as your a value. So your final equation would be 1/5 times x squared plus 2x plus 2, and you distribute the 1/5 into the equation, and you have 1/5 x squared plus 2/5 x plus 2/5. That is your actual equation. That would give you the root of I minus 1, or actually -1 plus I, and also -1 minus I, and also passing through this point. Okay, so what you can see here, it's basically reversing the whole process, and this would be really good when you see situations like this, like whenever you see I or anything with a square root, like just going backward, it's going to be really, really useful. Okay. All right. So that's this kind of question, and the next couple questions would be also about similar thing, because we do see this quite a bit. Okay. So let's go to the next video.